Well, you can tell from this image the sad news. The season is over. I was nervous about hauling out the boat because every time it's a different setup. This particular crane attaches at one point to the top. To help the yard, I had plenty of photos of the boat when it was hauled out last time. And I had markings on deck where all the obstructions were. Propeller, rudder, front of keel, back of keel, and transducers. My fear of haul out is warranted, as on my previous boat, the yard hooked the propeller and ended up bending the shaft on haul out. With this yard, my fears were quickly abated. Their professionalism was 11 out of 10. They kindly spent the time explaining the winter blocking plan. Cyclops was going to be safe during the high winds expected during the winter on the south coast. This is a great chance to see the folding keel that I so much enjoy on the boat. So the keel has a radiused edge so it can rotate into the boat when the keel is lowered. And a season zinc update. Just like last year, this one at the end is died. Probably still defended by another one. Really ugly from the outside, but has plenty of material still left. Gonna put fresh ones on. We're right in the middle of an oil change. This is my low-tech oil extractor. We got a little less than, we got 3.5 liters out. We got a replacement oil, which is 1540. That's what the Nanni dealer sold us. We'll change the oil in the transmission. Now, the Nanni engine comes with a really cool oil changing pump built in, but unfortunately, because I went with the jumbo alternator, I can't use it. So I have to do the old school, pull it out the dipstick. Here's where you put the oil in. Not terribly rocket science, you just unscrew this. This device here is a siphon brake. And what siphon brakes do is make sure that seawater that's coming from here doesn't just come flooding into the boat via a siphon. And so what happens here is a little bit of air gets introduced to this loop. So while you're sailing along, a siphon can't form because air will break it. And that air has a little escape area, which is this black hose. Maybe a siphon tries to form, the air breaks it, but a little bit of water comes. And that little pipe goes basically to my bilge, a little capture spot. Rarely do you get anything more than a teaspoon, but now it all stays in the bottle nicely and I can monitor it. At the end of the season, that nothing's coming loose. That is an engine mount bolt. So I've already done those ones. Just put a little bit of a socket wrench on it, can't move it a millimeter. And so I'll go around the engine and make sure all these things have not come loose in the season. This isn't supposed to be a strength test to see, whether you are stronger than the mechanic that built the engine, but just make sure nothing's come loose. A anode in their exhaust elbow. I took this one out and found it was in 90% shape, and so put it back in. This is what a brand new engine anode looks like. One thing that I learned from the hard way on a previous boat was you don't want to over tighten these things. They're made of soft metals. So after I put a new filter in, I always put the date, and I also like to put the direction to tighten and loosen because I'm a bonehead on these things. Every morning before I start my jobs, I have to lay out all my tools. It's time to wash the lines. I put them in incredibly mild soap in a very dilute manner, and then just let them sit for a bit. But these guys are waiting for their bath. They're like, hey, when's bath time? That's the first batch of lines. There'll be 3 batches, drying themselves out. Soaping, washing of the spray hood. It's a hose pipe fan here, so I have to be a little careful with my water usage. One of the things I'm obsessed with is having my steering work. We start at the hydraulic ram, which is attached to a metal shelf. And now you can kind of see a little bit better. Those 4 bolts, I check on to make sure they're still holding just fine. The ram does have a little play in it. Then I check this connection. This is the steering quadrant. I check these hex, tighten them up or test that they're not loose. I check that there's no water coming out of this. What happens is when the boat goes really fast, pressure comes up and this collar works. Most of the time there's no pressure. Then this little doodad here is the rudder indicator. That's the sensor itself. I check to make sure the tiller is attached well. Bolts there that hold the bearing in place. You'll notice I have a Raymarine arm here. Those are electric. There's an absolute identical on the other side, which is my backup. I also check the arm here that connects the 2 rudders. Obviously when one autopilot's working, the other's off, and it moves both rudders simultaneously. But it's nice to have 2 rudders, 2 autopilots. This is the bunk, I might call a sea berth, that some people use. I use it a lot to store the dinghy motor and other things, and then I raise it at a big angle so that it's very safe and won't fall down. The boat came with wood that covered this whole area. That way you could have a double bed in their mind in the engine room. And that's a spot that I use for storing the spinnaker and the Code Zero, and gives me great access to the inverter and all the other stuff around here. So I have put the boat on a diet, and right now sitting on deck, those pieces of wood are going to go to the recycle bin. And okay, the boat has become maybe a laundrette. Not even sure what a laundrette is, but the Wattensee got a good clean. The cushions are getting a good clean. Look at that new look. Up front is the Code Zero. Now the jack lines have to come out. They are attached there, and this particular one covers the starboard side of the cockpit. Luggage tagged up front, and then hitch tied here. So let me just undo the hitches. And this is the, some people call it a jib traveler, the French call it a chariot, but it allows me to move the position of the sheet lead for the Genoa or the staysail fore and aft. Okay, so it comes out of the boom to the ring, through the hole in the stack pack, through a bowline. You make the bowline, you loop the line through it, and you go up to the ring. It's time to do end of season windlass maintenance, which is just going to be a little bit of greasing. There's a place where you can put the winch handle right here, and by doing that, it effectively loosens up the winch so that the chain can no longer be pinched in there. And the reason for that is manually you could drop your chain by just expanding that, and then gravity will take over. Now you want the chain to come up, but for some reason you don't have a working windlass. Again, you disengage this, having this go counterclockwise. But the second thing you do is you look over here and this little orange tab. Well, what it allows to happen is if you look into here, there's a little guide that can then be rotated such that it bites the windlass right here. Okay? And so that means you can slowly crank up your chain using the winch handle here, not here. And so when you start cranking it, you then get the benefit that this little tooth thing will stop it from dropping while you're spinning around. So it lets you take a break while you crank. Unscrewing this cap. Okay, the clutch cone is out now, and now we're into an area where it looks pretty good. So I'm gonna get some paper towel and remove some of the water and put a little fresh grease in there. Okay, the keel is now in the up position, and when you're in the up position, all you see is the long ram, which is pushing the head of the keel forward, thus the back of the keel aft, and giving us the shallow draft, 1.3 meters. Now I'm going to press the keel down button, and we're going to watch the gauge. Maybe pressing down. There we're at 50, that's 70, now we're at 90, now at 100, 110, 120, and boom. So 120 looks like the high you get on lowering the keel. So this is what the keel looks like down. So only a little bit of the ram is showing, and all the big clunky keel head is there. That is a keel down position. Wish they wrote on the top of the keel, keel down. Keel is now going up.